The subway door slid shut with a metallic thud, trapping the weary evening crowd inside. The hum of the train filled the air, broken suddenly by a piercing wail. Heads turned in unison. On one of the benches sat a man in an expensive charcoal suit, his tie slightly loosened but his posture still stiff. Ethan Whitmore, whose name often appeared in glossy magazines beside billion-dollar headlines, looked utterly out of place. In his arms, his infant son flailed, tiny fists balled up, his cries echoing off the tiled walls of the underground. Ethan bounced him awkwardly, whispering words that sounded foreign on his tongue. "Shh, it's all right, buddy. Please." His hands, more used to signing contracts than cradling a baby, trembled slightly. A bead of sweat slid down his temple as the child's cries only grew louder. The passengers were growing restless. A teenager pulled her headphones tighter. A businesswoman sighed in frustration. A man in the corner muttered under his breath about people bringing babies on the subway. Ethan's jaw clenched. He'd handled corporate boardrooms full of cutthroat investors with ease. But here, with one tiny, inconsolable child, he felt powerless. Across the aisle sat Mark. His coat was worn at the elbows, his shoes scuffed from too many miles walked, but his eyes, tired yet steady, softened as he watched the scene. Beside him, his little girl Emma nibbled on a piece of bread wrapped in tissue. She tugged on her father's sleeve. "Daddy." "The baby's sad," she whispered, her voice full of concern. Mark followed her gaze and gave a small nod. He'd been there. The late nights, the helpless cries, the feeling of failing even when you were giving your all. He could see it written all over the rich man's face: exhaustion, fear, loneliness. The cries rose in pitch, bouncing off the subway walls. Ethan fumbled with a pacifier, trying desperately to press it into the baby's mouth. But the little one turned away, red-faced and furious. The disapproving stares around him burned into his skin. "Sorry," Ethan mumbled, though his apology reached no one. He rocked the baby clumsily, his expensive cufflinks glinting under the harsh fluorescent lights. The child wailed louder. Mark finally exhaled, running a hand over his beard. He looked at Emma, who was watching wide-eyed. "Sometimes," he murmured to her, "people just need a little help." Taking her hand, he stood and stepped closer. "Excuse me," he said, his voice steady but respectful. Ethan looked up, startled, his guard instantly rising. Strangers usually wanted something from him: money, a job, a favor. But this man's eyes held no agenda, only quiet understanding. "May I?" Mark asked, nodding toward the squirming infant. For a moment, Ethan hesitated. He had bodyguards, assistants, and lawyers for every aspect of his life, yet none of them were here. It was just him, his crying child, and a stranger offering his help. Against every instinct that told him to stay in control, he slowly held the baby out. Mark cradled the infant with practiced ease, his movements smooth and confident. He shifted his weight, rocking gently in rhythm with the train's sway, and began humming a lullaby. Soft, low, familiar. Emma leaned against his leg, smiling proudly. The effect was almost immediate. The baby's cries quieted into hiccups, then softened into sleepy whimpers, tiny fists unclenched, resting against Mark's chest. Within moments, the child's eyelids fluttered shut, surrendering to calm. The subway car, once tense, now exhaled in relief. A few passengers even smiled. Ethan, still seated, could only stare. His empire of glass towers and luxury cars meant nothing in this moment. What mattered was here. A stranger, holding his son with the kind of love and confidence Ethan didn't know how to give. Ethan's throat tightened as he watched the miracle unfold. His son, red-faced and inconsolable just moments ago, was now curled peacefully against the stranger's chest. The man hummed softly, swaying in perfect rhythm with the train. It was effortless, like second nature. How did you do that?" Ethan finally asked, his voice low, almost reverent. Mark chuckled softly, careful not to wake the baby. "Single dads learn a few tricks. Crying doesn't scare us anymore." Emma, who had been clinging shyly to Mark's sleeve, now stepped forward proudly. "Daddy always makes me feel better, too. He sings to me every night," she said, her small voice carrying across the car. Ethan's chest tightened at her words. He remembered the nannies he'd hired, rotating shifts of professionals who ticked boxes on schedules but never sang lullabies from the heart. He remembered staring at his son's crib at night, feeling like an imposter in his own home. "You're lucky," Ethan said softly, looking at Emma with a faint, wistful smile. Then he turned to Mark. I've built empires, negotiated with men twice my age since I was in my 20s, but I can't even calm my own child. His voice cracked slightly, and for the first time in years, Ethan Whitmore felt small, stripped of all his armor. Mark studied him for a moment. He didn't see the millionaire from magazine covers. He just saw another father, lost and aching to be enough. The subway screeched as it slowed for the next stop. Mark gently shifted, rocking the baby one last time, before carefully placing him back into Ethan's arms. The child stirred, whimpered once, then nestled into his father's suit jacket, still calm from the stranger's touch. He doesn't need perfection, Mark said quietly, his tone carrying the weight of experience. Just love. And rhythm. The rest you figure out as you go. Ethan held his son tighter, almost afraid to breathe. He looked up at Mark, his guarded expression softening into something rare, gratitude. You've done more for me in 10 minutes than an army of professionals, he admitted. Then, surprising even himself, he added, I could use someone like you in my life. Someone who actually knows what being a father means. Mark blinked, startled. Offers from strangers usually came with strings attached, but there was something raw in Ethan's voice. Still, he shifted uncomfortably, tugging Emma closer. I'm not sure you understand. I'm just a mechanic. I patch cars, not lives. Ethan shook his head. You just patched mine. The train doors slid open, a rush of air sweeping through. People spilled out onto the platform, but the three of them lingered in that small pocket of connection. Emma tugged at her father's hand, looking between the two men. Daddy, she whispered. Maybe he needs a friend. Ethan looked at her, then at Mark, and for the first time in a long time, he smiled, an unpolished human smile. She's right. Maybe we both do. Mark didn't answer right away, but as he stepped onto the platform with Emma, Ethan followed, still holding his son close. For the first time since his wife had left, Ethan didn't feel entirely alone. Something had shifted on that subway ride, something that felt less like chance and more like the beginning of a story neither of them had expected.